Hello and welcome back to the SKYLIT Books Podcast. I'm Tyler, your host, also a bookseller at the Los Feliz location of SKYLIT Books. I'll be joined today by Charles Bramesco. Charles Bramesco is a film and television critic living in Brooklyn. In addition to The Guardian, his work has appeared in Rolling Stone, Little White Lies, Vanity Fair, Newsweek, Forbes, Nylon, Vulture, Freeze, the AV Club, IndieWire, The Dissolve, Vox, and Pitchfork. All the good places to write stuff on the internet. He's also the author of Vampire Movies and most recently covers a film, The Story of Cinema in 50 Palettes. Thanks for joining me on the show.
That is quite an intro. Thank you very much. I don't think I've ever heard them said out loud like that before. I feel pretty good now. I'm ready for the podcast.
Oh, good. I want to hype everybody up. We want to come in feeling good.
Yeah, that's what a good intro needs to do, and goddamn, you did it. And I'm excited to be here.
Well, first, I just wanted to say the book's amazing. Love the book. I have to just quickly say before we go get out of the way, probably the best dedication of a book that I've read so far this year. I think that's such a great it's appropriate.
It's dedicated to my fiance, who we're gonna be husband and wife soon enough. And yeah, I mean, it was definitely a no-brainer because the whole process, I became, as the process of researching and writing went on, increasingly neurotic about just so many different things, and eventually things unrelated to the book at all. And she was very patient and abiding about everything. And so I thought I definitely owed that to her. Plus, I love it. That's the other part.
Well, that's very nice. That's good to hear. You want that. I guess I'll quickly. Do you want to shout it out real quick, because I think it's very appropriate for the book as well.
Yeah, what is it? It's for Maddie, without whom my world would be monochrome, right? Is that what it says?
Exactly. Yeah.
That's
touch of the poet in you. Yeah. You're a bit of a poet.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So I guess we'll just where does this idea for this book, where does it originate? Where do you get your ideas from?
So in the broadest possible terms, the publisher, Francis Lincoln, which is a UK outfit, approached me about the idea that was just in the simplest terms of doing a book about color and film. And so I thought about that, and pretty much everything beyond that was devised in, those early planning stages where I knew there's something itemized I thought would be the best way to cover as much ground as possible, because breadth was so much, the point of this. And so I didn't want it to read like a listicle. And so there were a lot of conversations early in this point about the sort of conceptual through lines that dictate what has been picked to be included in this book, and the sort of the way history gives way to, the successive phases of history. And so, I was surprised mostly that in suggesting, we settled on the number of 50. That sounded like a good, thorough, but humane number. And I sent in my suggestions, and I think they were like, these all look good. There was no. There were a very small handful that they were like, I think it would be nice if you included these, all of which I was like totally into in the first place. I think Grand Budapest was one of those, Spirit's Way, Schindler's List, and one other one. I don't remember. But no, their suggestions all great with me, and they were very cool about everything, right down to like Saw 2. I sent in like some really grisly screenshots, and they were like, we like this one and this one. You can pick one of them. And I was like, all right, that's fine. But yeah, it was the kind of thing where I was so surprised that it did not exist in some form already, because it seems like such like a rich, fertile way into learning about the history and the politics and the culture of film.
Absolutely. And I think it kind of does a great job of, I mean, like you say, it's sort of a historical, it's technological, it's artistic, it's a cultural criticism. Like you kind of bounce around between all those things over these 50 movies. And so was there a way that you were trying to specifically like strike that balance within each entry?
I think the balance was not incidental, but it was helped in that there are definitely some entries in which there is a specific technique that has been like devised or is being used, and that is where your focus is going to be. And there are, I guess in that way there was a balance in that. I knew I wanted to be, the book to be a combination of history and technical explication and criticism. And so the movies where it's less about the techniques physically that the colors are generated by, and more, the way they're creatively deployed, speaks to the other side of that. Yeah, I guess it shook out mostly in that I think I would have gotten bored writing in any one way about all this. If this was like just a thoroughly technical book, number one, I don't know that I would have been qualified to do it because so much of this was acquainting myself with the way that really basic machines work that I definitely should have known about, having studied film my whole life before now. But yeah, no, I don't think I would have been the guy to write about it if it was just that, or if it was just, going to be a really deep tissue dive into like the symbolism of color in film. And so I think of sort of bringing all those together was a way to keep the book varied and readable, and to keep me from repeating myself or sort of feeling creatively stagnated.
You do. I mean, obviously, all those things really work together in tandem, and it works that way as sort of. I think when you start to talk, about something from the early 20th century, it's hard to avoid a historical sort of context.
Yeah, a lot of it is putting it in context and, sort of trying to shine a light on people that, as much as film scholarship is helped along by stuff on social media or whatever, this is, I think, there's a register of the past that people just don't bother with, and that's really, really important, even for modern day, relevant to new releases and stuff like that.
No, absolutely. So yeah, you decided on 50. What was the list making process on your set? So it sounds like you're able to submit them. They were pretty cool with everything. Was it tough to get to 50? Or I mean, I guess tough to get it down to 50?
Yeah, so I mean that's what it was. It was tough getting it down to 50, not getting to 50. It was definitely a situation where, again, breadth was the name of the game, and that I wanted to cover as much in terms of time, in terms of scale of production, smaller films all the way up to big Hollywood productions. I wanted to spread the wealth around globally and sort of see how, as the 20th century rolls on, the technology for color film becomes more commercially feasible in, a wider swath of the planet. And so, yeah, in deciding which were going to be the 50, I set a few rules, which I was like, obviously we only need one film per director. I'm not going to double up on anyone, even though I could and I wanted to. And once you start to, with each entry kind of informally, and then as the pitch solidified very formally, you want an idea to be behind each one that you were including. And so you don't want a redundancy in terms of picking two movies that are going to illustrate the same idea, I guess. And so that is why, there was a point when I was like, all right, you have to pick between Singing in the Rain and Bandwagon and, Meet Me in St. Louis. You can only have one. It was like I had to start negotiating with myself. I was like, you can have one of them if you pick your favorite. And so, yeah, there were definitely repeats like that. Like I knew, I wanted to have a classical Western to illustrate the way that Ford shot the American West and the way that sort of brought people out there and part of that dream. Classical musical, I definitely wanted. An emphasis on horror, which I think falls by the wayside in discussions like this, was really important to me. And so I definitely knew I wanted a Herschel Gordon Lewis movie in specific, because he was like really at the forefront of getting that color of blood and getting the quantity of that amount of blood. And so, yeah, that's it eventually, winnowed itself down. And I think it was like I spent a day stuck at 53 and I just kept going over and over and couldn't figure out what I was going to lose. And I wish I could remember now what some of those ones I had to lose were. I don't know. If I remember them, I'll bring that up.
I was gonna say that's always, what could have been, but
I know.
Yeah,
It's a second edition we'll stick in, it'll kick it up to 53.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. One for every day of the week, and the next year, you get one more for savings there.
One bonus.
Yeah. Well, as I just Singing in the Rain kind of pings in my mind, because that's such a colorful, unbelievably gorgeous looking film, and yeah, it's hard not to just like gaze at it, but you include an amazing screenshot from and speak at length about the Dream Ballet, which I always feel like now, like, I don't know, when I was younger watching that, or if I was like watching it at home as a kid, or like in high school, I was always like, oh boy, can we fast forward through this? And now I'm like, 10 more minutes of the Dream Ballet, more beautiful.
A whole movie should be, yeah.
Just a full Dream Ballet, yeah.
I was raised on MGM musicals by my mother's parents, who they had like a big VHS set of all the Freed Unit movies and stuff like Yankee Doodle Dandy and Meet Me in St. Louis. And I was actually the exact same way, where when I was young, my favorite part of Singing in the Rain was the funny parts. Like I like Donald O'Connor when he runs through the wall. That was my favorite. And then by the time that happened, my sister had dance recitals, and I was like, I feel like I'm at one of these dance recitals. What am I doing here? But no, I mean, as an adult, I see that now, you know, it is pure rapture front to back. And more to the point, I remember at the same time when I was young, my favorite thing in the world, which is also in the book, is Fantasia. I thought we should have some sort of early Disney animation. It was either going to be that or Snow White was the other option. But yeah, Fantasia, which is that same sort of like very expressionistic, very sort of form pushing, sort of abstract paean to art itself. And I guess it made sense for me when there were like monsters running around and stuff, and less so when it was Gene Kelly doing a pas de deux with Sid Charisse.
Yeah, I guess, you know, as your kid, you're just like, oh, all right, animation's great. I can, you know, I can. Yeah.
I loved cartoons. I still do. Yeah,
cartoons are great. I can watch this. But then, yeah, so exactly. Once she's on the ladder with, as you say, the very infinity scarf or what it is.
Yeah, that's so. You bring up a good one, which is I wanted more animation. That was actually one of the ones that I was closest to, where it is represented kind of scantily. There's Fantasia, and there is Spirited Away, because I definitely knew we had to have Japanese animation in there as well. And there is, you know, an animated element to the really heavily digital movies. But I did want to like get more into the weeds with stuff like that. I was thinking about maybe doing Fantastic Planet, which is a very has a unconventional relationship to color that also teases out ideas about race. I thought maybe I love Yellow Submarine. I love Beatles' Yellow Submarine a lot, which gets into psychedelia in the 60s. And so these were, you know, these are now cutting room floor ideas, which I, you know, saying it out loud, I'm like, I think I made the right choice. I feel good about the sort of centrality of the ideas that I landed on.
Definitely. And Miyazaki, yes, Miyazaki goes without saying.
The king, yeah.
The king, the great. Just somewhere right now, chain smoking, having the time of his life.
Cursing out his son. Yes.
for that amusement park. Oh yeah, it's gonna be great. So I guess even coming further back, like as a young film fan, like when did you start noticing the use of color? Like when did that first occur to you, or do you remember?
Yeah, that's I'm there definitely was not one moment in specific. I think there was probably a time in high school or college when I realized that that was a constant in a lot of my favorite movies that I really like. You know, I like things that are vivid and that feel more exuberant than life. And so I watched Enter the Void a lot in college, which is also one of the movies that ended up in the book. Although, you know, to be honest, it was really when I started this project that I started to take note of how color is used in film and all the different ways that it is expressed in films that I don't even think foreground it that much, but it's a really good way in, sometimes in a capacity you wouldn't think about. I think there are movies that don't really shove it in your face, that don't wear it on their sleeve, but that in looking at that, you can learn a lot about, you know, what the filmmaker wants you to see and how they want you to feel about what's on screen.
Absolutely. I mean, it can be so subtle, but or it could be, again, I always come back to like Do the Right Thing, and it's like every wall is painted red. And you're just like, Jesus, it's hot. Yeah, it's a hot movie.
You can see the heat in the air. Have you seen Asteroid City at this point? I guess it's out this weekend.
Not yet. We'll be first in line, though.
Great line about how the air there out in the little desert town where this whole thing takes place is neither hot nor cold, but it is like, what did they say? It's like sharp and unforgiving. And then when you see the first shot of this town, you're like, oh my God, they absolutely made it look like that. It's through the use of you know, the color of rocks and the color of the sky. And you're like, that totally, it's crazy. He's so good.
Yeah, he really. So my partner and I, Audrey, have been doing it like long. We've been doing our like Anderson ramp watch up through into this one, and I don't know. I just yeah, he's really good.
I like his late ones so much. I mean, it's been a while since he's made a movie that I did not really flip for on first viewing.
Yeah, but I really liked Dispatch, but we always go back to Tenenbaums. Or a friend had like gifted, like was getting rid of a massive DVD collection, and so I just like went through and snagged a bunch of things. But Tenenbaums, the Criterion Tenenbaums was in there, and so
That's
that
like,
was,
I feel like that's rare at this point. I don't know if that is still getting new prints or whatever.
yeah, it's definitely it felt like when I looked online, it was yeah, I was like very happy to get it. It's also was like very well used. So I was like, okay, good. Now I can bring it into my home and burn it out myself. But
Nice.
just like fascinating. Just that movie also just like a warm blanket of and he's so funny. He's just so funny. Like I don't think he gets credit for that.
I love movies about big fractious families, and he's so good at writing them.
Yeah. Oh God. Well, I mean that's a movie with like again color. Like everybody's so like well defined by their colors in that film that you can just watch it and be like, oh, that's and smart guy. Good at making movies. So, so I in your book, so I loved in your book. It's like basically like half an art book, which it's always so cool to me, and I love that. So it's like you have all these great images. So how was it also going through and like collecting screenshots and making the choices for that?
Yeah, the I have to hand it to the design team, whereas like it looks so good, and I feel like I can say that about my own book because that was in no way my doing. Is that the publisher that owns Francis Lincoln, which is called Quarto, they've got this like really great team of people who were very patient with me as I sent individual time codes for, I was like, it has to be this part of this shot at this very moment. And they would send me one. And I was like, the blues do not look blue enough. I don't know where you sourced this, but it needs to look like this. And I made a lot of very, I'm sure, annoying demands because I thought it only makes sense if the image that you're seeing matches the description that I am writing. And so it's got to be, the one. But they were, they put up with all of my nonsense, and they were really good at their jobs. They found, in some instances from really out of the way movies, good looking stills that illustrate the principles we're talking about that are in the intended colors. That it really, it would only be half a book without them. You have to be able to see that. I was really excited in that. Actually, a friend of mine who is colorblind, I believe red green colorblind, because they include the little color codes at the bottom with each diagram of the color scheme. He was able to like look them up and compare them and develop awareness of what I was actually talking about. He saw that and he was like, I got a lot out of this, even in color blindness. And so that's like the best recommendation I can think of.
It really is. That's awesome. I was going to mention the codes are so great. Was that your your idea, or how did that come about?
That was, I think, the actual codes was part of the design team. They were like, we should have the lookup codes so that you can. Their idea was that this could be useful for professionals. Is that if you are working on a film and you're like, I'm looking for the kind of like prawn to dark blue nighttime digital kind of thing, and so you can open the book and you're like, oh, it's number XYZ. Yeah, and so I hope it can be a useful reference in that way. I just thought useful information to have, but that was the design team's touch. That was definitely one of their it was a great idea.
Yeah, it's one of those things like I guess it's like any kind of great idea like that. You wouldn't necessarily know to miss it, but now that it's there, I'm like, oh, that's so smart. That's so brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Color has been cataloged and standardized, and like you can quantify and look up color. It seems like such like a slippery abstract thing, but you can actually like put a magnifying glass on a red and be like, ah, yes, this is red number 135572, and it looks exactly like this every time. And it's just, yeah, it's kind of amazing.
It's weird to think that it's become something that you would be like, well, that's such an art or such a subjective thing is like definable. It doesn't really make sense.
We pinned that down. We got that. Yeah.
We figured that out years ago. Don't worry about it. I was going to say, well, you kind of mentioned the painstaking process of like going through and making sure the blues were the right blue, which is sort of kind of plays to a part of the book's thesis a little bit, which is that all of film is unfortunately, even from whatever it's finished, whatever the director's last pass is his final like idea, this is what I'm going to give to the world, is very editable. It can be changed, it can be transmuted and all these things, and eventually over time one of those things is color. It just degrades, it changes. And so I don't know. I just was going to let you talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it's the crazy thing is that film is such a vulnerable form of media that it's pretty much inevitable that over time the color of a film is going to change. I think directors put so much in to fine tuning the colors of their film and making it look a certain way, and there is a kind of tragic irony that, you know, within 20, 30 years, an actual film strip, it's going to turn, you know, without proper care, pink or red or orangish, you know, one of these colors. If you're really not careful, it could burst into flames if you're working with older nitrate stuff like that. And so it's, yeah, it is such it's a living thing, you know. That's what people who work with film always love to say. It's a living thing, and color is, I think, the way through which color and sound, I think, are the ways through which we see this aging most palpably. You know, you can recognize an old film strip as distinct from seeing a digital projection of a movie, and color is a big part of that. I think even, you know, when you are watching a digital projection, you can see that difference.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. It was funny to go through this book and just like, I obviously you kind of got very technical, but not in a unapproachable way. But it was very like, I guess, gratifying, or you know, not that this isn't something in my I hadn't thought or had, you know, validated for me, but it's that there's something about the graininess of the film print that's like, and I think everyone would say this, but I'm just like, it reminds me of it's the difference for me of watching a movie and a TV show. I'm always just like, right, this is grainy, lovely, like, you know, just something, it feels real that way.
It's, yeah, I think people respond to that. And what's more is that people working in digital film know that, because so much has been put into trying to emulate that without actually having to buy and learn how to use and develop the expertise required to make work actual film. And so what you see is that it's I don't know. I don't mean to say that it's lazy, but it is a cost-effective workaround that you're just like, we want this look, but we have neither, you know, either the time nor money nor inclination to actually do the work required to get it. So we're going to try to, you know, show you basically a picture we took of that look and give that to you. And my hope, I know that I feel like my friends can, but I also am friends with total, you know, sick people. And my hope is that, you know, I think the average viewer can also sniff out that difference, is that seeing like fake, what is it? There is a movie where there's like fake 35 stuff, where it's just, it doesn't look right. It doesn't smell right. It's like eating imitation cheese.
Well, so yeah, because I feel like, well, so what is it, like Knives Out? Steve Yedlin like has seemed to have like actually, like, there's that great Vulture piece with him. I think it was Vulture or New Yorker or one of them, but it was where he like explains this whole process where he's like hacking into the matrices of film and like of digital film to try to create like the halation effect and stuff, which are things that like I definitely, it tricks you to a certain extent, definitely, like it helps in that way, but there are other ones where I feel like there's a less thoughtful team of professionals have maybe put less work into it at that point. But
yeah, well, I mean, Netflix is such an important part of this whole discussion of color, because they are, you know, now a very big studio player who have foregrounded not the integrity of the image, but almost the opposite of that, where they are giving out to directors making movies under their production company, they are giving them technical specs that are supposed to accommodate streaming on small screens and not being seen on a large screen. And so that is a big reason why their house style has these kind of dull, dead colors, because those are, I guess the technical specifics being beyond me, but those are more easily repurposed for being seen on a phone or a tablet or on a TV. And that I obviously find extremely alarming, because it is not, you know, that does not herald a good future, if you ask me.
No, that's bad. I didn't know that specifically. I like, it's one of the,
And
yeah.
so I mean, it's not quite that simple, in that someone like Rian Johnson, who had more creative latitude to make this kind of movie, was able to make it look the way he wants to. If you watch it, it does look good. It looks good in such a present way that it seems anomalous to the rest of the Netflix movies. I have a monthly column where I write about new films, new Netflix original features. And if you watch these, there are definitely tiers of collaboration of Netflix, where there are, you know, there's the Irishman tier, where you are given a large sum of money and entrusted to, you know, make a good movie. And then there is the lower tier of something like, what's the teen
Oh,
movie?
what?
All the
Revenge.
Boys I've Loved Before. That's the one I was thinking of. Where
Yes.
if you watch this, everything is compressed. It looks, the colors look flat and just kind of zombified, and you realize that that is not an unfortunate side effect, but that is by design, which is pretty spooky.
There's just something, I don't know, like even watching like the most recent All Quiet on the Western Front. Like there's just something, which I was not, I think they just distributed that, but it's like, I think I heard someone say it this way. It's like, there's something with the pipes at Netflix. Like it just gets shot out of there looking flat usually.
Like, really muddy blues and grays and browns. And there is a movie I want to say called Rim of the World, directed by your friend and mine, McG, which just it looks like the whole movie is submerged in the piss Christ jar with just like that deep, unholy yellowish orange. It's rough stuff.
Well, good to know what he's up to. So thanks for being on the front lines of that.
No, yeah, I'm you need me on that wall.
Yeah, we would not survive without you. Deep in places I don't talk about at parties. I'm glad you're out there.
Thank you.
Charting the Netflix original McG film. Oh boy. So, I was gonna say the other really great thing I love about the book, and we kind of talked around a little bit, but it's just that you kind of break it into these 4 eras of like the way that films have looked over the course of like the last 100 or so years. And I guess was it, were you able to kind of easily define those breaking points, or was it a little more amorphous and you kind of had to pick a spot?
Yeah, I think I tried to use technological developments as the dividing lines between the 4 sections, although even that is not quite a perfect system in that. So like the first section goes from the advent of the moving picture to really the heyday of Technicolor, which is a sort of, foggily defined marker point. But then the second one goes from that point to the decline of Technicolor in the late 70s and takes you through the entry of color film to other parts of the globe. The third section goes from that death of Technicolor through the videotape era, through the independent film rising in America, to the advent of the digital image, and then the fourth one is all digital. And so, in that respect, that kind of helped keep everything orderly. Although it is not, it's not. These are not rock solid boundaries. There are still in that final section movies that were shot on film that don't really rely too much on digital elements, and there are, there are exceptions. It was just, it had to be divided up somehow, and I thought that this was the cleanest way, the least convoluted way to do that.
Yeah, and I think it all really tracks and works, and I think you can kind of, I think even in people's minds or memories, they can remember sort of that shift from film to digital, or heavily digitized sort of films and stuff. But I have to circle back because I feel like I've done a lot of Technicolor watching in my life, and especially recently, it's just been like it just explodes off your screen in a way that, again, something like anything on Netflix does not.
Yeah.
So here's really a question: how did you narrow it down to how will Success Spoil Rock Hunter, Gentlemen's Prefer Blondes, how were you just wringing your hands?
Yeah, it was another one where I was like, there were some difficult Sophie's choices to be made there. I definitely knew I wanted to have a film by Powell and Pressburger involved, and I was pretty firm about Black Narcissus being it. That is definitely one of the big ones. I knew I had to limit myself to one musical, gosh, but there, you could do a whole book, and I'm sure I read one that exists already, but you could do a whole book about Technicolor and everything done with that. Criterion has a really good section that is specifically, if you search Technicolor, they will show you all of the movies along those lines. And like any one of those could have ended up in the book. Niagara with Marilyn Monroe when she was really young is an incredible looking movie where it's, not part of this conversation generally about, like the really big Technicolor movies. But when you watch it, it's, you're seeing something unbelievable. Thief of Baghdad. There are just so many good ones that I wish I could. I love, that is probably, in doing all this, the one I find most interesting is the digital era, but the one that I just like am transported the most by is definitely the Technicolor era. I swoon every time I see it. And so I'm very jealous. Actually, in this past weekend, I believe, in London, they had the Film on Film Festival at the British Film Institute in London, I had mentioned, and they are showing stuff on like IB Technicolor. They're showing nitrate prints, just like people were being carted out of there on stretchers, just totally ravished. I wish I could have been there.
Yeah, well, there was something so striking and about the idea of a comedy on Technicolor. Like, it's like, because I think now you would be like, well, this is the quickest, sturdiest. We don't really have to, or the flattest, most just like sitcom lighting genre. And then you turn on something like, again, like Will Success Spoil Rock Hunter or Pillow Talk, or like a rom-com, something a rom-com now that like Netflix can churn out 15 a day if they wanted to. And they were just like, this wants to just like fill up my house.
Yeah, I saw I saw Holiday Inn for the first time this past Christmas at my fiance's mother's house, and I was thinking about this, and I was like, this is just a Christmas movie. They did not have to go this hard, but the colors look incredible. Just like all the costumes, you can see that people were just trying to put this technology through its paces. They were like, all right, we got to have one person all in the same frame. They're like, person in purple, person in orange, purple and green, person in blue, just to show that we can do all of these at the same time, which like as recently as 10 years earlier would have been kind of unthinkable. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, and you kind of speak about like even like going as far back as Wizard of Oz, where it's like they kind of figure out this technology. And so, right, exactly. Artists are like, yeah, let's go. Like, let's use it.
I think that, that is one of the things, if you study a century's worth of filmmakers, you see that they are really driven by like a desire to push their limits. Is that the best filmmakers get restless very easily, and they're always trying to figure out how they can like do something more elaborate, more challenging, more technologically involved. It's very moving. I find that.
Yeah, well, and you kind of mentioned specifically like Bergman and Kurosawa, who were like going to resist for as long as they could, and eventually kind of give in.
Really old guys who are just like, all right, I'm going to make my color film now, and it's going to be the most astonishing thing you've ever seen in your entire life. God, yeah.
I mean, it's just for that level of sort of talent and care is like unbelievable. Thank you for putting Speed Racer in. Like that
was near the top of the list. That was absolutely, because God, I get the chills. In fact, I know I had to be on there because the finale of that movie makes me feel the same exact way that like the grand finale of all the great old MGM musicals do, where I was like, I just get overloaded with pleasure, and it's like a sugar high. I love it so much. And I think that like that movie is on its way to positive consensus. I know that at the time people had no idea what was going on and they wanted nothing to do with it, but I do think that it's getting there.
I feel that you can feel the tide shifting a little bit. I think it's definitely moving in the right direction. Because and again, I think it now, and I don't know, and maybe you feel this way as well, but it's like every time I watch something from even 10 or 20, maybe 20, like the 90s or the 80s, I'm just always like, points for doing something, points for making this look good.
That is the saddest aspect of all this, is that the standard just used to be so much higher. If you were watching just a regular late night basic cable movie that they would play in the 80s, just establishing shots of like people's apartments look so much crisper and clearer than they do now. It is sad, but it also makes you more acutely appreciate the movies that take the care to make themselves look good. There's I didn't think I was going to include it in the book, but in 2016, a movie called How to Be Single starring Dakota Johnson came out, and that is a movie that it's a pretty bog standard rom-com, and it's about living life in the city. We recently I saw How to Marry a Millionaire, and I was like, oh, it's trying to do this. My point being, this movie shot in New York. They shot on 35 millimeter film, which the director fought for, and the studio got the studio to pay for, and it looks so good, and it makes me think so much more highly of the movie. It makes the movie better, like the jokes are better just because they're being done in a movie that you already have this positive affinity for. Yeah, it's just it makes such a big difference. And I know that a lot of instances directors don't just have the latitude to just do that, but when they do, it really makes a huge difference. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I think after so long of, and not that I, you know, Apatow is certainly a guy who like has changed a lot of the way comedy works, and I like a lot. I love a lot of those films, but there's something more satisfying about a joke feeling like it's in a movie than a sketch being in a movie.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely something to that. The art of plotting a comedy has been kind of lost, which is sad because if you watch like the really good, I love a good fish out of water premise. If you watch like Trading Places, you're like, what's stopping us from doing something like this? This wasn't that hard. It wasn't rocket science. We're still capable of this. And yet, it's like these are so rare and so few and so far between.
Yeah, I know it's ridiculous. Obviously, 2001: A Space Odyssey had to be in the book. What's your relationship to that movie, and then obviously like the sort of climactic, just colorful wash?
Yeah, that was so I think like a lot of healthy young teenage boys, Kubrick was really like my first heavyweight director that I got into. And when I was like 13, or yeah, probably around then, 2001 was the first like really challenging, poetic, abstract movie that I was like, oh, this is not, a movie that can be read literally. There is a lot of work that you have to do to put this movie together. And so I think, I was trying to sort of punch above my weight intellectually a little bit because I was like, this is a chance for me to feel smart like a grown up watching this movie. And then the reward for watching stuff float around in space to classical music for an hour and a half is like you are shot through space at light speed through a rainbow that surrounds you. And I was giddy. I couldn't believe it. And then, I saw this again later in life when I was more prepared for everything that it contains. I saw it on 70 millimeter with Keir Delay in person at the AFI Silver in Silver Springs, Maryland in 2015. And that was like a transcendent experience because, now that I don't have the impatience of a 13-year-old, I can appreciate all the stuff on the space station, like all of the kind of Soviet design stuff. And then after having appreciated that, that makes the final Stargate sequence all that more potent. I was watching this and it was, I felt the skin peeling off my face like I just opened the Ark of the Covenant. It was incredible.
Which I will kind of, so I had a similar, I think I caught it out here at the New Bev. They did like a Friday 2 p.m. matinee, and it was just like to be in a dark room with a bunch of people floating through the Stargate.
You're like clutching the armrests, trying not to fly back. Yeah,
just holding on. Yeah, and
it's really something. I saw. I think shortly after finalizing something. It was the book was locked in, but I saw Babylon, and which ends much in the same way as 2001: A Space Odyssey with like this big vortex of color. And I was like, God, if only I could have I would swap out La La Land and stick that in there in like 2 seconds. That is because the ending of the movie essentially puts into visual terms the whole thesis of the book, which is that if you break the film image down to its component pieces, it turns back into the colors red, green, and blue. And that is how the movie ends. And I was just like, God, this guy, he really did it on him. He did that for me.
I was about to say it reminds me of the ending of Babel, and so that's it. And it's fascinating. I mean, that was like I don't know. It seems like you had some. I know that could be a divisive film.
I liked it a lot. I was one of the brave, the few writing positively about that movie, which I think with time, the people who hate it will move on to other things and stop thinking about other things. And the people like it will get more of a market share. And I think that that'll be the determiner of its legacy, not, the gargantuan quantities of money that it lost for Paramount, whoever did that one.
Maybe somebody, which is another thing. I don't know why does anyone care what movie loses what money for what megacorp?
That's not our business. We're not business people. Yeah.
Just did it lose your money, Jimmy Kimmel? I don't understand. Why are you mad about it?
I don't know. I don't get that. Yeah, I don't get that either.
But the ending of that is extraordinary, and like you kind of get into it literally shows you kind of what the process, the film, like the I mean, it's insane. Yeah, the dying of that is just is phenomenal, and like kind of totally immersive in a way. that I don't know. And just that movie again. It's like I don't know. Chazelle, right? Exactly. Like La La Land. I mean, like he's like clearly going for has the color and it's there and it's a great entry in the book. But it was like nice to see him take this massive swing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which
This is, I mean, it's the kind of thing that I'm just glad exists in the first place, where I do happen to like it. But I was like, we should be giving total wackos huge sums of money to do with as they please more. That should be just a policy.
Yeah, with a sort of like, as I've like come to terms, I really enjoyed it as well. But it's like I always now come to terms of like, do you watch 3 hours of a movie that will exhaust you and then like make its main character cry tears of sadness at having watched Singing in the Rain? Like, if it feels like it was reverse engineered with that in mind. It's like, the happiest movie of all time, it's gonna make this guy
going to just destroy this person. Yeah.
It will be laid waste to by this thing. So I kind of love that as a premise as well. Well, I think we did it. We covered 100+ years, a lot of color.
And we had fun doing it, didn't we?
And we had a good time along the way. That's the most important thing. I mean, I guess is there any other, I don't know. I mean, are any other things that, again, so it sounds like you had some animation left on the floor.
The one that I actually was very close to including, and one that I, in an extended future edition that I would love to, is Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which is like just the most sickly, unholy looking movie. And I think a lot of that has to do with the way that just like it was processed in like a pretty dirty, careless way. Not careless, that is to say, but it was like, this was not a state-of-the-art facility where this film was processed. And so it looks like something like gnarly that you found, in a place that you shouldn't have been rooting around in. And so, that was one that I was keen on, but could not find a place for. But there's the good news is we sold out the first printing of the book. The second printing is going to be released, I think, later this month or early next one. And they're doing printings in Spanish, Chinese, Japanese, and French as well, if your listeners speak those languages and want to read a book in them.
Absolutely. I think we go that far. We go that deep.
Nice.
Huge in France. No, I don't.
Los Angeles is a city. It's a very diverse city. You've got people of all stripes.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And it does feel like a book that should belong in like a French apartment. I would just say, right. And just from the look of it, the subject matter.
It goes good on a mantle. Definitely.
And oh yeah, absolutely. It does such a great job. And I love these, I love these types of books where you kind of can also, I was like, oh great, I'll go back and watch some of the Searchers and see that it's like John Wayne's wearing a red shirt and a blue handkerchief, and it's like this kind of, he's mirroring the sky and the ground that he's on, and I love stuff like that. And
it's but no, the best part was just revisiting all these movies and seeing them in this new way, and just I had a great time with that aspect, of all the sort of craziness in me that this process eventually brought out. That part was really rewarding and really, really a good time.
Yeah, it's sort of like you were your own film professor there for a little while. You got to program a class for yourself.
Little lesson plans, rubric, and whole thing.
I was gonna say, is there any other sort of because obviously again this is like incredibly well researched in terms of like every level of it. Was there any sort of like additional reading maybe you'd recommend, stuff that you found that you were kind of high on that maybe you'd want to pass along?
Additional reading. Well, so there's a lot listed in the back of the book. Nothing that leaps to mind right now, but there's like an additional reading guide back there of I read most of those. Some of them I just was looking it up and I was like, oh, this sounds interesting, and I thought that I should shout them out. But I did a lot of reading of interviews with cinematographers, reading of interviews with the directors. People love. Here's a fun tip, as you are also in the profession of interviewing. People love discussing process more than their ideas because they already know all the answers, because that is stuff that has already happened. And so in these interviews, they will happily talk about like how cameras work and how we did the color and all this stuff. But if you're just like, so what do you think about death? They're like, oh, yeah. So there's a lot of good material on what I was researching.
Nice. Well, yeah, what do you think about death? Cool? Bad?
I'm pro. I'm of the same opinion that Val Lewton promoting The Seventh Victim said, where he said, death is good. And I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds pretty good.
I mean, on that note, I think we got to wrap up.
Print it. Death is good. Charles Bramesco.
Death is good. Boom. We're going to put that on the front of the next cover.
Thank you so much for having me on. This has been a lovely time.
Awesome, man. No, it's a pleasure, and it's a great book. Well, come check it out. If you're ever in Los Angeles, come out to our Arts Annex, which is where this book will live. It's with all the cool film books. It's with all the cool music books.
Absolutely. I love, I'm due for a trip to LA, and I love going to bookstores. So that all sounds good.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for listening. Thanks, Charles, for joining. And like I said, come out to whenever, if I believe we still have some copies in the store. They might have also sold out. It was going quick. But wait for the next printing. If you have to, come to 1814 Vermont and grab your copy from the SKYLIT Books Arts Annex. Thanks again, Charles. Appreciate it.
Of course.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the SKYLIT Books podcast series. We hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to check out the book featured in this episode, or others, please visit skylitbooks.com. If you're in the Los Angeles area, stop by for one of our live in-person author events. You can find a calendar on our website. If you like this podcast, leave us a review. It really helps us out. Our music is by Duck the Piano Wire. Till next time.